Now, as we start going up into the mountains, we go from 90-degree and sunny weather, slightly windy. Now we're watching the temperature gauge literally dropping, going from 90 to 80 to 70 to 60, and the clouds and clouds getting darker. Now we're dropping down into the 30s, and we're starting to hit snow. This is the story of brandnewsin on tour, 2007, spring of 2007. And we had a day off and we were driving from Salt Lake City, Utah to San Francisco, California. Seems like an uneventful day to drive. Usually day off drives of that magnitude are pretty just filled with, stopping a few times to get something to eat, and then you get to your destination. But this one had so many twists and turns that I tell this story often. And it all started in the morning. We checked out of our hotel room. We had played in Ogden, Utah at this place called the Great Salt Air the night before. And if anyone decides to Google it, it's a very famous concert venue that literally sits on the bottom part of the Salt Lake itself. So it's just outside of Salt Lake City when you're going on Route 80, which Route 80 cuts all the way from basically New York City all the way to San Francisco. So that morning we leave, we gather everybody up in the van. We luckily don't have the trailer. Most of the time we would have a trailer behind our van, but on this tour, we were sharing our trailer with one of the other bands on the tour, and they had a tour bus, and they're like, we'll tow your trailer with the gear because we're gonna share your gear, and it's gonna save us a ton of gas. So if we had the trailer, this might have been a completely different story, but we didn't. So the day starts out, quick eat at probably Denny's or a local diner. We hit the road. And as we're leaving Salt Lake City on Route 80, there is a railroad track that runs, parallel along with Route 80 for quite a bit. And so Route 80 is here, the railroad track is here, and Salt Lake is here. And we're driving, and a train is coming at the same speed as us, and we're just kind of chucking along. And at that exact moment, my drummer was smoking a cigarette, sitting in the passenger seat, and I'm driving. Now, mind you, I am driving for this entire drive, story I'm about to tell you. We start getting down there. The train is either getting ahead of us or we're getting ahead of the train, but along the Salt Lake is a ton of seagulls. Now, the train starts to disturb these seagulls, and these seagulls are starting in a massive flock to fly across the highway. I tell Kevin, he has a window cracked. I'm like, you gotta get that window up and get it up fast. So no sooner than he got that cigarette out the window and got the window up, and I can't remember if it was an automatic window or one that rolled up. I almost feel like he was doing the old roll. And as soon as he got it up, we hit about 6 or 7 of those seagulls. We're literally going through a flock of seagulls. And we hit them, and one splatters on the windshield, one hits the thing, and the other one goes right down the side of the vehicle. Now, if Kevin still had that window open smoking a cigarette, we would have been covered in seagulls. Now, that alone feels like it's quite the story, but there's more. So if anyone's ever have done that drive from Salt Lake City to San Francisco, knows that you're gonna go through the salt flats in Nevada, which everyone has seen on TV. You've seen, like the cars doing their test drives out there, and they do land speed records out there. And it is literally exactly what it looks like, but it's going like that for hours and hours on end. You can see something that looks like it's a mile away, but it's actually 10 or 15 miles away. Spend the day getting through that, and we start getting close to Reno, Nevada. That is going to be the next major stop before we start going through the mountains. Now, before we get to Reno, the temperature is really hot. We're going through the desert. Salt Lake City was probably very temperate at the day when we started the day, but now we're approaching temperatures of 90, 95 degrees, extremely hot. Our air conditioning is on, but it's also incredibly windy. So before we get into Reno, the heat goes up And now we're starting to get sandstorms. And if anyone's been through a sandstorm before, if you're from upstate New York, I can only equate it to a whiteout, but with sand. And we're driving down through the desert, and again, you see the flatness, and then all of a sudden you just see this wall of darkness, which is the sand being stirred up across the thing. So once you go into the sandstorm, your vehicle's a little shaky and you can't see much. So you can only go a little bit, and it sounds different because at least in a snowstorm, the snow there isn't enough, the snow just kind of either going over that or just like that. Whereas the sand, you literally hear this little grains of sand like hitting the entire vehicle. So we go through a few of those, which was something I don't think any of us had experienced at that time. And then once we get through that, the sandstorms subside. But now we are dodging like tumbleweeds. And I'm not talking the tumbleweeds you see like in Western movies where they're just kind of rolling through town. Ones that are the size of small cars and like couches. And they're just like it's nonstop, these things going across the highway, and some of them we can't avoid. Some of them you hit and they blow into a million pieces. They're just brittle pieces of wood. And some of them we hit and it's like, it literally shakes the vehicle. So now we've hit seagulls. We've hit a sandstorm. Now we've hit tumbleweeds. We've hit heat. Now we get into Reno, Nevada. And once you get into Reno, if you continue on 80, you start slowly going up into the mountains. And I can't remember for the life of me what the mountains are. I want to say the Sierra Nevada mountains or whatnot. But this mountain pass that's going to take you from Reno and eventually to San Francisco takes you through something that's called Donner's Pass. And if anybody knows what Donner's Pass was the Donner Party that was traveling across the states. They got caught in this part of the mountains, and most of them died. They had to eat. Some of them, there was cannibalism involved. There was this whole thing. So you go through Donner's Pass. Now, as we start going up into the mountains, we go from 90-degree and sunny weather, slightly windy. Now we're watching the temperature gauge literally dropping, going from 90 to 80 to 70 to 60, and the clouds and clouds getting darker. Now we're dropping down into the 30s, and we're starting to hit snow. And not just snow, but like very heavy snow. So now we're like, man, what are we in store for now? So eventually we get into almost a whiteout condition of the snow. Us Central New Yorkers have dealt with snow and travel in snow. We're pretty adept to it. I have never seen snow like this in my life, because snow that happens in the mountain ranges is a completely different monster than what happens with the lake effect snow. So we finally get to this point. We come around a turn and all the traffic is stopped. There's all these things that are on the side of the highway saying, no through traffic, please stop. And there's cops and all these other people that are stopping people, basically saying, you're not going to be able to pass through. The only way you're going to get through is if you have chains on your tires. And we're like, chains? Like, we don't have any chains. And he's like, well, your option is to get chains or to, turn around. You're going to have to go back to Reno and then wait for the road to open. Well, when's that going to be? He's like, I don't know. It could be tomorrow. It could be the next day. We're not real sure. We can never predict with this type of weather how much snow comes down, how many accidents might happen. It could be a bit. Now, mind you, we had a day off, but we were actually playing the next day. So part of us were like, I don't think we can risk it, because we may not be able to get to San Francisco for our next gig, but we don't have chains for our tires. So the guy's like, well, if you don't have chains, there's a guy right there selling chains for $100. So what a scam, So we obviously pull over, we pull out $100. This guy puts on the chains, shows us how they all work and everything. I've only ever seen chains on tires in movies, never actually had driven with them. Gives us a bunch of instructions. One of them is like, you're not to drive over about 20, 25 miles an hour. If you do, then the chains could potentially come off, rip your tire, rip the undercarriage of your car, come off, and then you're basically screwed. So I'm like, well, how bad could it, how much worse can this weather get? I'm thinking in my mind, I'm from Something, New York. I've driven in all kinds of weather conditions. And again, I haven't seen snow like this, but I'm pretty sure we can navigate this pretty well. So we get the chains on and off we go. Seagulls, sandstorm, tumbleweeds. Now we're in a blizzard in the mountains with chains on the tires. Seems to be okay until we start getting around a couple of these bends and we realize the snow had not been plowed. So when you're dealing with snow of like 2 or 3 feet that are on the road and it's literally coming up, probably if I got out, they were probably above my knees. So we're literally plowing through the snow with our van. And thank God the chains were on there, because a rear-wheeled van would have never made it through this stuff. So I'm going about 10 or 15 miles an hour tops. And I'm starting to get I'm getting a little anxious at this point, because and then you realize you're on the mountain, and then there's guardrails on each side, and the mountain may be on this side, and the guardrails are over here, knowing that off the side of that guardrail is probably a couple thousand feet of. So we seem to be doing okay. Everybody in the van, you can feel their tension, and our one roadie, and I will out him because I will always out him for this. Brian Badger was in the seat behind me, and he was freaking out. Panic attack. You could hear him kind of hyperventilating. I think at one point he was almost dry heaving. He was terrified. And everyone else was kind of talking, and then finally at one point I'm like, everyone just shut up. This isn't helping me at all. We've already had a day. Let's get through this. And they said it was only be about 5-6 miles before we get on the other side of this pass, and we can get to a place where we can feel that we're getting the safety and be able to take the chains off the tires. So we come around yet another bend. Now, this time there's 2 cars in front of me, and they're both sliding backwards. So they must have gotten through before they closed the road. They did not have chains on their tires. And one was kind of stuck and sliding back, and this one was definitely sliding back. And there was about a spot just enough for me to get through. And I thought about stopping and kind of navigating through, but then behind us was at least 1, maybe 2 tractor trailers that were coming, and they can move a little bit better. And one of them sees us and starts to hit it, and you can see him starting to kind of jackknife a little bit, not to a point where it's going to be bad, but you can see him sliding, and I'm going, I got to keep moving. I got to try to get through this, because we're going to be the sandwich between these 2 little cars and these 2 tractor trailers behind us. And I verbally start saying out loud that I'm freaking out, and everyone shut up. I'm like, I don't know exactly what we're going to do. And I just remembered using my video game skills from being a kid. And I grew up in the 80s, and I played a game called Pole Position. And I had the steering wheel, and I swear to God that was those skills that I learned in that video game that got me through this exact moment. So the 2 cars are coming, and I don't know what I did, but I did this quick little move, and I remember kind of punching it. And I remember at that time that my dad came out at me, because then I had to roll down the window and yell at this guy, "What are you doing?" And they're like, I'm like, I can't yell. This guy's probably freaking out too. I don't even know if the accident happened after us. We get through it, and then we just deal with this next 5 miles of driving, which took us, maybe it was 5, maybe it was 10, whatever it took us. It took us over 2 hours to go just this very short period of driving. So we finally get to a place where we're coming down through the mountain. We get through the pass. We stop to get some food. We stop to all collect ourselves. A couple guys in the band probably had some cigarettes. Everyone just got out and Hail Mary, kiss the ground, everything else. Get some food at a Burger King that was in this truck stop. We go out, and I'm hoping to find this picture, but there is a picture of the front of the grill of our vehicle, and it's covered in snow. There's a tumbleweed stuffed in the side of it, and there's definitely feathers from the seagulls. So we are literally carrying our entire day with us in the front end of this grill of this van. So we feel that we're out of it, and someone else says, "Hey man, I'll take the drive from here." I'm like, "No, I'm going to make the drive. I've come this far. We're 3.5 hours or whatever away from San Francisco. I'm not going to stop now. Something tells me I need to be in charge. My anxiety is not going to let someone else take the wheel. So we get back in, we get the chains off at this point, and now we're going down the mountain. And now the tractor trailers are coming down, and tractor trailers don't go down mountains pretty slow. So they're flying by us. And every time that they did, the slush on the road was literally just, it felt like someone just dumped an entire thing of slush over the top of the car. So then we couldn't see anything. So the windshield wipers are like doing everything they can to push that off. So we're losing visibility every few minutes of complete hoping that we can see out the window. That was the last of it. After that, I don't remember much other than we finally hit smooth sailing and we got to a Motel 6 outside of San Francisco. I just remember saying to the band, I deserve my own room tonight. So I got my own room at the Motel 6. And I just remember, I don't even remember laying down. I think I was falling asleep before I even hit the pillow. So this all happened from, I can't remember how long of a day it was, but from Salt Lake City, Utah to San Francisco. And there was multiple times that we could have easily died or been covered in multiple things. And to this day, I've never experienced a drive like that in my life.